What's going on, guys, and welcome back to F1 for My Team Career Mode, Season 2, Round number 4, the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix at Imola. So it's another track that we didn't race at last season. Next time out will be in Canada and then Austria after that, so we will then finally be into some tracks that we did race at last season. But for now, we are at a brand new track for F1 23, and it is Imola. Of course, we've raced here in previous F1 games, and it's a track that I really do enjoy. I really like driving around Imola. It's just a very fun track to drive, I think. So yeah, very excited and yeah, interested to see how this one goes. Putting a bunch of upgrades on the car, most of which, well, I'm pretty sure all of which won't come through until Canada next time around. As we look at R&D though, not a whole lot of changes. Still Aston Martin and Mercedes at the top there. We're kind of there in the middle. Ferrari have they've kept their third, and then Red Bull a bit further behind. Alpine have now jumped right up there with Red Bull, McLaren and Haas a little bit further behind. So getting quite close in that kind of mid-pack at the moment. So it'd be interesting to see how that all changes and how that goes for the rest of the season. Now Q1 here, very nice and sunny out, but that's not how the whole weekend, to be honest, will end up being. But as you can see, the car feels great. It really feels good through this section here. I'm absolutely throwing the car around, kind of blipping in and out of green and red, sector times, basically delta. But we are just about making an improvement on our previous time. Ended up P8. I believe that lap time was set on a worn set of tyres. Like, I just used one set of tyres, so definitely could have gone quicker, but just wanted to not use up all my tyre allocations just in case we wanted to use some in the race. Nobody really of any significance out in Q1, so it's basically just the two Alpha Tauris, the two Alfa Romeos, and I believe it was Lawson and Logan Sargent, so no real surprises there. This is my Q2 lap. Now, as you can see, we are right behind Albon here. This is because I only ended up doing one kind of run here in Q2 because rain was forecast for the end of the session, so I wanted to get as much running as I could, and I was able to get two consecutive fastest laps in. The second lap we ended up being right behind Albon, and we only just improved over the line. It was only by a tiny amount. We ended up P6 in the end there. Tsunoda only just manages to get through in P10. It's another shocking qualifying day for Red Bull, as both of them are out in Q2. Perez P11, Verstappen P13. Verstappen's not been having a very good season this time around, really hasn't. Everybody else pretty much not a surprise out in Q2. And we get into Q3, and now the rain is here, and well, to be honest, the rain would be getting heavier as the session went on, so basically you needed to get your lap in early. Now I was a bit worried at first because as we went into Q3 I ended up having a kind of electrical fault on the car, which means that I had to wait about 3.5 minutes before I could go out on track. Finally went out on track. Everybody had already pretty much come in from their laps. There might have been a couple of drivers still circulating, but everybody had pretty much done their laps, and I was fairly confident that the rain was getting heavier. And as we went through Sector 1, as you can see, we were green through Sector 1, but it wasn't purple. So I was thinking, it's not the best time. I wonder if we've just, because of that issue, this might cost us now. Nothing I could do about it though, as we run a little bit wide through there as we come to the end of Sector 2, the tricky section, but then it's purple, as you can see on the bottom left there, purple through Sector 2. So obviously I found some pretty good time here, but we've seen before that in the rain, it seems to be either one of two stories in F1 23. We're either really quick in the rain compared to what we are in the dry and compared to the AI, or we're far too slow. When I think of quick, I think of Monaco, I think of Brazil, of course, and Miami qualifying last time. When you think of slow, you think of Las Vegas, where we were slow. Monza, we weren't very good. Here, though, we're good in the rain because we get pole position for the race. We beat Hamilton by about 0.3 of a second to pole position. So we will be starting from the front of the grid for the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix. There is rain forecast for the race, but I'm not sure how much. So we'll have to see how this goes. Tsunoda's P7, but here we go. Let's get into the race.
Welcome to Imola, the spiritual home of Ferrari. But you don't need me to tell you that. Just look at the red-clad tifosi in the grandstands. They're ready. Are you ready? For the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix. One lap of Imola, anti-clockwise of course, unlike most Formula One circuits, will take our drivers round 3.1 miles of track. 19 turns, 9 right-handers and 10 to the left. Drivers will need to be precise at the hairpin at turn 7, given the subsequent uphill section. Without a good exit from that corner, they'll lose a lot of time on that stretch. Before we begin, let's take a quick look at the grid lineup for today's race. Davies lines up on pole position, and it's Lewis Hamilton alongside. Considering the rest of the grid, we have Norris, Leclerc, Russell, Tsunoda, Sainz, Gasly, Stroll, Perez, Ocon, Verstappen, Fernando Alonso, Oscar Piastri, Albon, Doohan, Sargent, Liam Lawson, Joe, Bottas, Magnussen and Nick de Vries. Now it's almost time for lights out, so let's go down to the track. Anthony Davidson is here once again for today's Grand Prix. Now I want to talk to you about Carlos Sainz. That was a great podium in the last race. Can they keep that momentum going this weekend?
There are never any guarantees in this business, but certainly the performance last time out would have boosted their confidence coming into this one.
Alright, so here we go for the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix. We're on pole position. It's lights out and away we go. The race is starting dry, but there is rain forecast later on in the race. We're just not sure when it will come. So I'm a little bit worried here because I don't think that I quite have the pace of the Mercedes, who are now 2 and 3, because Russell's got a good start and already got up to P3. I don't know if I've quite got the pace of those guys in the dry, but once the wet conditions come into play, as I'm already being hounded by Hamilton as we head through the first sector, once we do get to those wet conditions, I think we've got a pretty good chance here, but can I hold them off for this first part of the race? We've had a decent first sector after being hounded a little bit by Hamilton, but the AI are always very quick on this first lap, and like I said, the Mercedes is quicker than us on paper, and I think it is quicker than us generally in general altogether, but here on this track when we're in dry conditions, so it's going to be a little bit of a task to keep them behind. I'm actually just praying for the rain. You can see how cloudy it is out in the sky there in Italy. It is definitely not looking good weather-wise, but that might be a good thing for us. But like I was talking about before, it's weird with this game where it's hard to set the difficulty for a wet race because, you know, dry conditions, I reckon my difficulty is about where it should be for this track. But in the wet, you know, considering we got that pole position when the track wasn't at its best, I'm wondering if the difficulty is a bit too low for the wet conditions, but I can't change it based on conditions, you know, especially when you've got a dry quali and a wet race, and partly because if I changed it for this in the dry section, we would be getting totally screwed over in this dry part. So yeah, it's really difficult to see what happens here, but as you can see, and especially now onto lap 4, and already the rain droplets are starting to form. Hamilton is right over the back of us now, because in the kind of dry to wet conditions, the AI are better. They are better at driving dry tyres in these wet conditions. Now we get on lap number 5, our engineer tells us that there is a new strategy available. Sure enough, that is to switch onto the intermediate compound tyres. He tells me to do it on lap 6 though, and I think that's probably because Tsunoda's coming in this lap, because I'm thinking it's DRS hasn't been disabled quite yet. As we come into the pits it gets disabled, but I'm thinking no, we've got to come in now. We're the first car, we should have priority to come in first, so I'm going to do it. That is going to hold up Tsunoda though, because he also came in that lap, but I just think if we went on 1 lap longer we would have got so screwed over. So I thought, no, screw it, I'm in the lead of the race, I am the lead car in the team, I will be pitting this lap. Hamilton has been rather screwed over in the pits. As you can see, he has been completely boxed in by the Alpines, having to wait for a bunch of cars to go past as well, and he is in the pits for what seems like an eternity, and he has dropped from P2 all the way outside the top 10. So that is big for us, because Hamilton is our main championship rival, at the moment. He has absolutely been plummeted down the order. Charles Leclerc is actually now the car directly behind us. And in the warm-up phase on these intermediate tyres, Leclerc is actually really hounding us. So I'm almost thinking now, are we this good in the wet conditions? Or was that just a bit of a fluke in quali? Because at the moment, Leclerc is really putting some pressure on behind us. Hamilton, though, is really having to make moves now because he went from P2, he's now outside the points, he's fighting with Alexander Albon in the Williams to get higher up. He's behind my teammate as well, Yuki Tsunoda, now the car ahead of him, as Hamilton makes a very nice move there through turn 1 on Alexander Albon and will be trying to make his way back through the order. The Ferrari of Carlos Sainz also trying to make moves in this race, gets cut off by Pierre Gasly as they head down the main straight there, but is now going to try and go round the outside of turn 1, and he gets a very good move there, just pretty much the same move that Hamilton did, and that is Carlos Sainz up another position, but a decent amount, decent way behind his teammate, who is currently running in second place. Fernando Alonso was not running very well after a penalty made him start P13, and it's getting even worse for him because on lap number 8 his car is done for. He has got some kind of mechanical failure, and Fernando Alonso will have to park up after 2 podiums on the bounce. He is out of the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix. As now Tsunoda trying to make moves on Pierre Gasly as he tries to go around the outside of turn 1. I think Gasly's putting up a little bit of a fight here. Yes, he is, and he's actually managed to just about stay in front of him. And now Tsunoda having to look back at Lewis Hamilton behind, but manages to just about keep him behind. Oscar Piastri having a look at a move on one of the Alfa Romeos, I believe that would be Zhou Guanyu with the yellow T-cam, as they're going side by side up into turn 1. Zhou Guanyu on the outside, Piastri goes through the corner, and then they head through turn 2. They actually bang tyres a little bit there. There's a little bit of orange front wing end plate coming off there, and Piastri has damage, so that means that Piastri is going to have to come in for a front wing change. That's going to put him all the way down to the bottom of the pack, the back of the pack, so very unfortunate for Piastri there. We continue on, and we managed to get away from Leclerc after, one lap of just warming the tyres up. We've now managed to get a good margin from Leclerc, and we're very quick. We are very quick in the intermediate conditions. This is what I was saying. Dry conditions, the AI difficulty is pretty much where it should be. Intermediate conditions, and I haven't even got a wet car set up, we're really quick. So that is one thing about this game that I'm a little bit iffy about, In previous F1 games, wet conditions were usually more difficult for the real players compared to the AI. It seems to be mostly opposite in this game, but then occasionally you get that one race where their player really isn't that good in wet conditions and the AI is. So it's a little bit all over the place. I kind of hope they somewhat fix that, but I don't really know what they'll do about that. Sergio Perez on lap 16 onto 17 is going to be the first driver to change onto the wet compound tyres. So it is now wet enough that the full extreme wet blue tyres are going to be the preferred tyre. Charles Leclerc spins round from P2 on that same lap. What has he done? He was looking at a great podium, first podium for him and Ferrari this season, as Norris then comes up behind him and smacks into the back of him. And that's another McLaren with a front wing to change. That is very unfortunate for Leclerc. Ferrari's home race, and he's just thrown away a podium. Sergio Perez, his undercut on the wet compound tyres has worked, and that's put him up into P2 now. Lance Stroll is P3. We left it a couple more laps on the wet because I had plenty of time in hand to wait a couple more laps. I didn't want to, go onto the wets too early and, completely screw over our strategy. It's a second slow pit stop for us. It's a 4.6 second pit stop, but honestly, it doesn't matter. We are so far ahead that we're still going to have about a 7-second margin to Perez as we come out of the pits. Hamilton still trying to make moves in this race. He has now got, I believe that would be Pierre Gasly in the Alpine ahead of him. And once again, it's another move around the outside for turn 1 for Lewis Hamilton. He's making a few of those moves in this race. Tsunoda is kind of towards the back end of the top 10. He's fighting with a McLaren with I believe that has got to be Max Verstappen, who he's now going around the outside of. Verstappen actually seems a little bit slow. That was a really easy move for Tsunoda there. Verstappen didn't really put up a fight at all, so I'm not sure what's going on with the Dutchman there. He's really not been having the greatest season here in Season 2. As lap 23, when we've got a bit of an issue now, we've been cruising for this entire race. We have a rather large lead, but now my ERS is stuck open, so overtake is stuck open. I can't turn it off. You see in the middle there it says disable, but it won't let me disable. It is stuck open. My engineer hasn't said anything. I'm now just having to be a little bit careful, because through the corners we are, if I put the power down too much, we are going to spin around, and in conditions like this, these are not the conditions to have this issue. We head through turn 1. I also have to be a bit more careful on the brakes, a bit more earlier on the brakes, because, you know, we've kind of got an extra force of power shoving us down the road as we're trying to brake. Thankfully, it doesn't last very long, and as we head through lap number 24, it is now fixed, and we can now, you know, switch overtake on and off once again. But a little bit of a scary moment there in an otherwise rather dominant race, because lap 28 here, we are just cruising along really. I'm not pushing too hard. We've got over 20 seconds margin to Perez behind. I was really quick in these wet conditions, and to be honest, it was quite boring, and it's really unfortunate. It's unfortunate in some ways. It's not unfortunate in the fact that we're going to win by, in the end, over 30 seconds. We actually catch up to the back of the pack, which is Piastri right at the back here after that front wing change, and a few of the slower cars like the AlphaTauris and the Alfa Romeo. But we are going to come through to win the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix by 32 seconds. It is a dominant drive in the wet conditions. Like I said, it's just a bit annoying that in these conditions I can't change the difficulty, because if I do, then in dry conditions we're going to get absolutely mullered. So a little bit annoying. I hope they do a little bit of a fix, you know, try and fix this, but it's been a dominant win for us here in Emilia-Romagna.
They take the checkered flag then here in Imola in what has been another outstanding Grand Prix. What do you think it was today, Ant, that gave them the edge over the competition?
Well, keeping their tyre temperatures up in the tricky wet conditions was really important. There's not much grip out there at the best of times, and it's 10 times worse if you're out there on cold tyres. So the way they kept the rubber in its proper operating window was a huge advantage today.
Here comes your top 3 making their way down to the podium for what can only be described as a fantastic day for Formula 1.
So there we have it. We win the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix at Imola in Season 2. Lance Stroll has gotten himself on the podium for the first time this season. So Alonso had a podium in China and then in Miami. He of course DNF'd from this race, but Stroll has actually managed to pick up his first podium of the season and of this F123 My Team career mode of ours. Perez is also there for Red Bull for the first time. Well, Perez has had podiums in Season 1, but he will get Red Bull's first podium of Season 2. So, yeah, 2 somewhat different drivers on the podium, at least for this season. But we're winning once again, so it's now 2 race wins for me, 2 race wins for Hamilton this season. Tsunoda just about manages to creep into P10, so he will score 1 point. Albon scores 2 points for Williams, so a good result for him to get Williams off the mark in Season 2. We, with that result, now lead Hamilton by 4 points in the Drivers' Championship, so we're back in the lead of the championship, but only 4 points between us two. Russell's then back up to P3, Gasly back down to P4. Tsunoda, even though he scores 1 point, has dropped from P10 to P12 now, because Stroll, with a big haul of points, gets himself up into that P10 spot. And yeah, like I said, Albon on 2 points as well, scoring the first couple of points for Williams this season. And then in the Constructors' Championship, well, Mercedes still are ahead in this championship, but we're there in second. Red Bull still third, Aston Martin fourth. Then you've got Alpine, Ferrari, McLaren, and now Williams with 2 points. It's very close from Red Bull all the way to Ferrari. You know, those 4 positions, very, very tightly contested, so it's going to be interesting to see how that all plays out for the rest of the season. But there we have it. That is it for this video, guys. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed, please go ahead, like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.